Hey, good to see you again. Beyond the borders of known space, a civilization had spent centuries perfecting the safest possible way to meet strangers, only to discover that humans considered hospitality a form of engineering. Here's how it happened. The maintenance drone crossed the forbidden boundary at exactly 14 meters per second. On the command dais of the Veyron observation vessel, Covenant of Silence, First Arbiter Sareth watched the machine drift toward the largest diplomatic crisis in 3,000 years. The drone was small by interstellar standards. Its central body measured less than 2 meters across. 4 articulated service arms folded against a white ceramic shell marked with faded maintenance symbols. A pair of maneuvering thrusters pulsed blue against the darkness, each burst so gentle that the machine seemed to be swimming through space. It carried no visible weapons. It carried no shield generator. It carried no diplomatic transponder. Attached beneath its chassis was a polished metal tray. On the tray sat a silver kettle, 12 sealed cups, a porcelain container filled with dried leaves, and a rectangular card printed in 600 translated languages. Sareth stared at the object through the transparent command wall. No one spoke. 40 kilometers ahead, the human exploration vessel Wayfarer remained exactly where the Veyron First Contact Protocol had ordered it to remain. Its engines were cold. Its weapon ports were sealed. Its communication arrays transmitted only the approved handshake signal. The humans had obeyed every command, except this one. Protocol Custodian Iris lifted her narrow head from the sensor console. Her 4 black eyes reflected the approaching machine. "The object has crossed the quarantine boundary," she reported. "Distance to the receiving station is 9 kilometers." Sareth's breathing membranes tightened. "Issue another warning." Iris sent the command. A pulse of coded light crossed the distance between the Covenant of Silence and the human vessel. The message was simple. No human ship, human citizen, autonomous representative, biological sample, artificial intelligence, cultural object, or diplomatic instrument was permitted to approach the Veyron delegation until the 72-stage evaluation had been completed. The maintenance drone continued forward. Sareth turned toward the communications pit. Did the humans receive the warning? "Signal confirmation is positive," Communications Examiner Vell replied. "Their vessel acknowledged within 1/10 of a second." "And the machine?" "Still approaching." Sareth looked again at the tray. The kettle was emitting heat. Not much heat. Barely enough to register against the cosmic background. Yet there it was. A small and absurd thermal signature moving through the most rigidly controlled diplomatic perimeter in the known galaxy. For 180 years, the Veyron Covenant had governed all first contact between newly encountered civilizations. The protocol had prevented 7 interspecies wars, contained 19 biological contamination events, and stopped 3 predatory empires from infiltrating weaker worlds under the appearance of friendship. Every clause existed because someone had once died without it. No unidentified object crossed the boundary. No foreign intelligence entered Veyron systems. No cultural exchange occurred before genetic, linguistic, technological, psychological, and mimetic screening. No exception had ever been granted. Sareth's predecessor had once delayed contact with the Tarethian Union for 11 years because their ceremonial clothing contained symbiotic microorganisms of uncertain purpose. Entire generations of diplomats had been trained to regard patience not merely as a virtue, but as the foundation of survival. Yet humanity had arrived only 42 hours earlier. And now it had sent tea. Weapons Examiner Corin rose from his station, his armored forelimbs unfolding from beneath his formal mantle. "First Arbiter, I recommend immediate destruction of the device." Sareth did not answer. The drone had reached 7 kilometers. Corin continued, "Its internal mechanisms are shielded. We cannot verify its processing architecture. We cannot confirm the absence of concealed weapons. The tray may contain chemical agents. The printed card may carry mimetic hazards. Its approach constitutes a deliberate violation." Iris turned one eye toward him. "The human vessel remains stationary. That does not reduce the breach." "No," Iris said. "It makes the breach stranger." Sareth felt the same unease. Aggression had patterns. Infiltration had patterns. Even madness usually had patterns once sufficient data had been gathered. The humans had done nothing expected of a hostile species. When the Wayfarer first appeared at the edge of Veyron-controlled space, it had transmitted a broad-spectrum greeting and immediately reduced its velocity. After receiving the quarantine order, Captain Elena Marlowe had halted her vessel 600,000 kilometers from the Covenant of Silence. She had surrendered a complete biological profile of her crew. She had provided technical specifications for the Wayfarer's life support systems. She had disabled every active sensor except navigation. She had even rotated the ship so that its primary engine faced away from the Veyron vessel, a gesture the Covenant's tactical analysts had interpreted as either extraordinary trust or extraordinary confidence. Then a coolant regulator aboard Receiving Station 12 had failed. The station was unmanned, as required by protocol. It served as a neutral platform between civilizations, containing sealed communication terminals, remote laboratories, and atmospheric chambers for later diplomatic stages. The failed regulator was not dangerous. It was merely inconvenient. The station's internal temperature had begun rising. Several translation processors would shut down within 30 hours. A Veyron repair unit had already been dispatched, but it would not arrive for 6 days. The humans had noticed the malfunction. Captain Marlowe had offered assistance. The offer had been denied. She had offered replacement components. The offer had been denied. She had requested permission to transmit repair instructions. The request had been delayed pending review. 32 minutes later, the maintenance drone left the Wayfarer. Now it was crossing the void with a repair kit, a kettle, and enough tea for 12 beings whose digestive systems had not yet been approved to consume it. Sareth watched it pass the 5-kilometer marker. "Open a direct channel to the human captain," he ordered. Vel hesitated. "Direct communication is prohibited before Stage 9. I am invoking emergency interpretive authority." On the human vessel, Captain Elena Marlowe stood in the center of the Wayfarer's command deck and watched the same drone approach Receiving Station 12. Her crew had been silent for nearly a minute. Chief Engineer Marcus Vale leaned against the edge of his console, arms folded across the front of his gray utility uniform. He was 47 years old, broad-shouldered, and permanently marked by the minor burns and cuts of a man who trusted tools more than safety procedures. Beside him, Cultural Liaison Dr. Amina Okafor appeared less calm. "They are going to vaporize it," she said. Vale nodded. "Probably. You say that as though you sent an empty cargo crate. I sent Unit 7. Unit 7 has tea. Unit 7 always has tea." Okafor closed her eyes for a moment. "Marcus, why does a maintenance machine always have tea? Because people become unreasonable when equipment fails. That is not an engineering principle. It is the most reliable engineering principle I know." Captain Marlowe allowed the exchange to continue. She had known Marcus Vale for 16 years. He had repaired propulsion systems inside radiation storms, rebuilt atmospheric processors during a colony evacuation, and once kept 3,000 passengers alive for 9 hours using a cargo refrigeration unit and 6 kilometers of irrigation pipe. He was not reckless. He simply considered malfunctioning machinery a moral challenge. The Veyron receiving station had been overheating for 4 hours. Its damaged regulator was a simple electromagnetic flow controller. Unit 7 carried 6 compatible substitutes. The tea had been Vale's addition. Marlowe had approved it, not because she believed the Veyrons would drink it, not because she intended to mock their protocol. She had approved it because the station was built for 12 occupants. 12 chairs surrounded its central communication table. 12 environmental interfaces waited behind sealed panels. 12 ceramic recesses had been placed beside 12 work surfaces. Someone had designed the station while imagining strangers seated together. Then fear had wrapped the place in rules. A warning tone sounded across the bridge. Communications Officer Leo Chen turned from his display. "Incoming narrowband transmission from the Covenant of Silence. Direct channel, high priority authorization." Dr. Okafor stared at Marlowe. "That should not be possible until Stage 9. "Apparently," Marlowe said, "we have inspired procedural innovation." She stepped toward the central projector. "Open it." The image of First Arbiter Sareth appeared above the deck. The Veyron was taller than a human, though his body was narrow and almost weightless in appearance. Pale blue skin stretched across a delicate skeletal frame. 4 dark eyes formed a vertical line along the center of his face, and translucent breathing membranes opened and closed at his throat. Marlowe had seen recordings during the preliminary exchange, but this was the first time either species had spoken directly. Sareth's voice emerged from the translator as a layered harmonic. "Captain Elena Marlowe, your autonomous device has violated the quarantine boundary." Marlowe inclined her head. "First Arbiter Sareth, the device has crossed the boundary. It has not violated the purpose of the boundary." The Veyron's upper eyes narrowed. "You have known our protocol for less than 2 days. You are not qualified to interpret its purpose. That is fair. Then order the device to return." Marlowe glanced at Vale. "Can it still return?" Vale checked the telemetry. "Yes, Captain." She looked back at Sareth. "It can." A pause followed. On both vessels, officers leaned closer to their consoles. Sareth's membranes opened once. "Will you recall it?" "No." Weapons Examiner. Corin moved into view behind the First Arbiter. "Then your species has chosen hostility." Dr. Okafor stepped forward before Marlowe could answer. "Examiner Corin, the drone has no offensive systems. We transmitted its full schematics 18 minutes ago." "Schematics are claims," Corin replied. "Objects are facts." Vale quietly muttered that this was an excellent engineering principle. Marlowe ignored him. "First Arbiter," she said, "your station is experiencing thermal runaway in 3 translation processors. The current failure is minor. In 27 hours, it will become significant. In 41 hours, the primary data vault will exceed its safe operating range. Your repair vessel will arrive in approximately 140 hours. We are aware. Then you understand why Unit 7 is approaching. I understand that you were denied permission." Marlowe remained still. "Yes?" "Why proceed?" "Because your machine is broken." The answer seemed to disturb Sareth more than any threat could have. Across 3,000 years of recorded first contact, no species had described a Veyron protocol station as simply a broken machine. The stations were diplomatic sanctuaries. Their geometry reflected legal principles older than some civilizations. Their construction followed ritual standards approved by the Covenant Assembly, yet the human engineer had reduced Receiving Station 12 to its most basic truth. It was broken, and he possessed the tools to repair it. Sareth's voice lowered. "You are risking the destruction of your device." Captain Marlowe glanced toward Unit 7's telemetry. The drone had reached the station's exterior access port. "We know. You are also risking the termination of contact." "We know." "Then why does your machine carry containers of heated liquid?" Marcus Vale stepped into the projector's field. "Chief Engineer Marcus Vale," he introduced himself. "The liquid is water. The leaves are Camellia sinensis. The sealed cups contain nothing until someone chooses to open them." Corin's plated forelimbs tightened. "Is the substance medicinal?" "Sometimes." "Ceremonial?" "Sometimes." "Intoxicating?" "Not usually." "Then what is its purpose?" Vale considered the question. "It gives people something warm to hold while they decide whether a problem is still worth arguing about." Silence filled both command decks. Dr. Okafor looked at him with a mixture of horror and admiration. Sareth turned toward the tactical display aboard the Covenant of Silence. Unit 7 had attached itself to the exterior of Receiving Station 12. Its service arms unfolded. One arm opened the regulator housing. A second connected a diagnostic cable. A third held the silver kettle level. The fourth raised the printed card toward the station's external camera. Iris enlarged the image. The card displayed a short message: "Maintenance assistance provided without entry by human personnel. Replacement components are sterilized and isolated. Tea is optional. Conversation is welcome whenever you are ready." Sareth read the translation twice. The Covenant of Silence had encountered humanity by accident. A Veyron survey probe mapping the unclaimed systems beyond the Orison Veil had detected a human research buoy. The buoy had immediately transmitted identification, astronomical data, navigational warnings, and an invitation to establish contact. The Veyron Covenant had spent 16 months observing humanity before responding. Their findings had created uncertainty. Humans were technologically young. Their interstellar civilization occupied fewer than 100 settled systems, a small domain, compared with the Covenant's 847. Their ships were inelegant, their political institutions were numerous. Their languages multiplied faster than the Veyron Translation Corps could classify them. Yet humanity displayed contradictions the protocol was not designed to measure. Humans built weapons powerful enough to destroy cities, then used the same engineering principles to redirect asteroids away from uninhabited planets. They divided themselves by nation, colony, philosophy, profession, ancestry, and preference, then crossed millions of kilometers to rescue strangers whose names they did not know. They preserved ancient grievances in libraries while sending medical teams to former enemies. They feared contamination, yet touched one another constantly. They understood risk, yet approached it whenever someone needed help. The Covenant's analysts had offered no unified conclusion. Some classified humanity as unstable. Others called it socially fragmented. Weapons examiner Corin considered humans dangerous because their history showed repeated conflict. Protocol custodian Iris considered them dangerous because they survived repeated conflict without losing the ability to cooperate. Sareth had reached a different conclusion. He believed humanity was unfinished. That did not make it weak. It made it unpredictable. The Veyron Covenant had not always been cautious. 3,000 years earlier, before the first contact protocol, the Veyrons had welcomed a species called the Osric into their home system. The Osric arrived with music, gifts, and promises of shared prosperity. Within 9 months, an engineered fungus spread through Veyron agricultural worlds. It destroyed 4 staple crops and poisoned 2 oceans. The Osric offered treatment in exchange for control of Veyron trade routes. The Covenant refused. The resulting war lasted 90 years. 6 billion Veyrons died. When the Osric were finally expelled, the survivors created a doctrine known as sacred distance. Distance prevented infection. Distance prevented deception. Distance allowed observation before trust. Every Veyron child learned the words before entering formal education. Approach is desire. Distance is truth. The first contact protocol transformed that doctrine into law. Nothing crossed the boundary until everything was understood. For centuries, the system worked. Civilizations complained about delays, but they complied. Some waited months, others waited years. One crystalline species had remained in quarantine for 23 years because its reproductive frequencies interfered with Veyron navigation systems. Patience became proof of peaceful intent. The humans had waited 42 hours before sending a machine with tea. Corin moved closer to Sareth. "The device has opened the regulator housing," he reported. "Authorization to destroy it remains available." Sareth studied the drone. Unit 7 had removed the damaged flow controller. Its service arms worked with extraordinary delicacy, placing every detached component into a sterilized container. A new regulator emerged from its internal bay. The replacement was not identical to the Veyron component. It was better. Iris examined the transmitted specifications. The human unit includes triple redundancy, passive thermal bypass, and a mechanical fallback requiring no processor control. Corin looked at her. "Can it interfere with station systems?" "Any replacement component can interfere with the system it enters." "That was not my question." "No," Iris said. "Your question assumes malicious purpose before technical evidence." The Covenant's command deck grew colder. Sareth knew the dispute was larger than the drone. Corin represented the oldest interpretation of sacred distance. To him, uncertainty was evidence of danger. Iris represented a younger faction within the Covenant. She believed that absolute safety had become a prison built from historical trauma. Sareth had spent most of his life between those positions. He had defended the protocol before impatient empires. He had also watched it fail. 37 years earlier, the Covenant delayed contact with the Pelosian refugees while their fleet waited beyond a quarantine boundary. The Pelosians carried an unknown pathogen, and the protocol required extensive screening. The delay lasted 9 months. Their food lasted 7. By the time emergency approval was granted, 200,000 refugees had died. The protocol had prevented contamination. It had also prevented help. Sareth still saw the refugee ships in his sleep. Now a human machine repaired a station it had been forbidden to approach. The replacement regulator locked into place. Unit 7 activated a pressure seal. Coolant began flowing through receiving Station 12. The temperature stopped rising. Aboard the Wayfarer, a cheer nearly broke out before Captain Marlowe raised one hand. Not yet. Marcus Vale watched the diagnostic stream. Flow stable, pressure stable, thermal load decreasing. Translation processors should return to nominal range in 14 minutes. Dr. Okafor studied the Veyran transmission. They have not destroyed it. That does not mean they will forgive us. Vale shrugged. Forgiveness is easier when the air conditioning works. The direct channel remained open. First Arbiter Sareth stood motionless on the projector. Captain Marlowe, he said at last, your device has altered a protected Covenant station without authorization. Yes. Your engineer replaced a component of Veyran design. Yes. Your machine now occupies the external maintenance platform. Yes. And it continues to carry the heated liquid. Captain Marlowe looked toward Vale. Chief Engineer? Vale tapped a command. 40 kilometers away, Unit 7 detached the tray from its underside and guided it through the station's external transfer lock. The tray entered a sterile chamber. The silver kettle remained sealed. The cups remained untouched. The container of tea leaves sat beside the printed card. Unit 7 then moved back outside. It folded its 4 service arms. It waited. Sareth watched the station's interior camera feed. The tray rested on the central diplomatic table beneath 12 empty chairs. A human object now sat inside the most controlled neutral space in Veyran territory. No human had entered. No foreign biological material had been released. No autonomous intelligence had accessed the station's systems. The humans had obeyed the words of the protocol while violating its spirit. Or perhaps, Sareth realized, they had obeyed its spirit while violating the words. That possibility was more dangerous than the drone. It suggested the protocol could be wrong. Corin's voice became hard. First Arbiter, destroy the station. Iris turned toward him. The station contains no active threat. It contains an unauthorized cultural object. Then remove it remotely. Its presence is a statement. Yes, Iris said. That is what cultural objects are. Corin faced Sareth. The humans are testing us. Every concession invites another. First a machine, then a diplomat, then a vessel. We have seen this pattern. Captain Marlowe heard him through the open channel. First Arbiter, may I answer that? Sareth gave a small motion of permission. Marlowe stood in the center of the human bridge with her hands clasped behind her back. Examiner Corin is correct about one thing. We are testing you. The Veyran command crew stiffened. Marlowe continued before anyone could respond. We are testing whether your rules exist to protect life or to protect themselves. Corin's forelimbs struck the edge of the dais. You presume to judge laws written in the ashes of billions. No, Marlowe said. We presume those billions wanted you to survive. We do not know whether they wanted you to stop living. The translator rendered her words without emotion. But every being on the Covenant of Silence felt their weight. Sareth looked toward the dark curve of receiving Station 12. Humans often spoke of history as though the dead remained participants in the present. Veyrans treated the dead differently. Their wishes were preserved in law, their errors catalogued, their names placed within ancestral archives. The past was not questioned, it was carried. Marlowe's words implied that carrying the past could become another form of burial. Sareth opened a private channel to the Covenant Assembly. The response arrived instantly. The Assembly had been watching. 120 arbiters appeared across the command deck's upper displays, their images arranged in concentric arcs. They represented worlds spread across hundreds of star systems. Some wore ceremonial masks, others displayed exposed ancestral markings. All understood that the next decision would become legal precedent. High Arbiter Dayal spoke first. First Arbiter Sareth, report the status of the breach. The human maintenance device has repaired receiving Station 12. No hostile systems have been detected. A sealed tray containing water, processed plant matter, drinking vessels, and a written message has been placed within the station. Has contamination occurred? No. Has station security been compromised? No. Has unauthorized intelligence entered Covenant networks? No. Then the breach is cultural. Corrin stepped forward. High Arbiter, the object is a deliberate challenge to sacred distance. Dayal's image turned toward him. Examiner Corrin, do you recommend termination of contact? Yes. Across the arc of assembly displays, several arbiters shifted uneasily. Dayal addressed Sareth. Your recommendation? Sareth did not answer immediately. The correct response under protocol was obvious. Contact should end. The human vessel should be escorted beyond Covenant territory. Receiving Station 12 should be sterilized. Unit 7 should be confiscated or destroyed. No ambiguity existed in the law. Yet Sareth continued watching the station. The interior temperature had returned to safe levels. Translation processors were stabilizing. A small metal kettle sat at the center of 12 empty chairs. The humans had crossed a boundary to repair something that did not belong to them. They had accepted the possible destruction of their machine. They had risked the contact mission itself. They had asked for nothing in return. Sareth thought of the Pelosian refugees. Their ships had waited exactly where they were ordered to wait. Their dead had obeyed every rule. My recommendation, Sareth said, is that we proceed to Stage 9. Shock moved through the command deck. Protocol Custodian Iris turned all 4 eyes toward him. Corrin stepped away as though struck. High Arbiter Dayal remained silent for several seconds. Stage 9 permits direct visual communication and limited cultural exchange. Yes, the required biological and mimetic screening is incomplete. Yes. Then, justify the exception. Sareth looked at Captain Marlowe's image. The humans have already provided direct communication. The object on the station is a cultural exchange. We may deny that these events have occurred, or we may study them. Corrin raised his voice. They forced the exchange upon us. Sareth faced him. No, they offered it. The tray remains sealed. The cups remain empty. The chairs remain unoccupied. Every meaningful choice is still ours. Corrin's armor plates shifted with agitation. Choice under pressure is not choice. Pressure is why civilizations create diplomats, Sareth replied. The assembly displays flickered as private votes were cast. Captain Marlowe waited. She understood enough about governments to know that the greatest decisions were often made in silence by people trying not to reveal how frightened they were. Marcus Vale watched Unit 7's systems. Battery at 68%. Dr. Okafor looked at him. Can it remain there indefinitely? 4 days, maybe 5, and after that? It shuts down. Marlowe did not look away from Sareth. Then it waits. The vote ended. High Arbiter Dayal read the result. Stage 9 is authorized by a margin of 71 to 49. The decision applies only to this contact event. Receiving Station 12 will remain under full quarantine. No biological representative may enter. Sareth inclined his head. Understood. The assembly disappeared. Corrin remained beside the dais. You have weakened 3,000 years of law for a malfunctioning coolant regulator. Sareth's membranes opened slowly. No. The law weakened itself when a coolant regulator became more important than the beings it was built to serve. Corrin turned away. First Arbiter, Iris said quietly. Stage 9 requires a cultural response. Sareth looked at the station. The humans had sent tea. The Vayrans had no equivalent. Their bodies did not require frequent hydration. Their ceremonial exchanges involved light patterns, harmonic recitations, or the transfer of historical records. Shared consumption was rare and usually limited to bonded families. What can we offer? Sareth asked. Iris studied the station schematics. A chair. Sareth looked at her. Explain. They sent enough cups for 12 individuals. They are imagining a meeting that has not yet been permitted. We cannot enter. Neither can they. But the station has 12 mobile diplomatic chairs. Corrin turned back. You propose moving furniture as a cultural response. Iris's lower eyes narrowed. The humans sent boiled leaves. For the first time since the drone crossed the boundary, Several Veyran officers produced a faint harmonic sound that the translator identified as amusement. Sareth considered the idea. Send the chair. Receiving Station 12 contained 12 chairs arranged around its central table. Each was controlled remotely for species-specific adjustment. Iris activated one. The chair nearest the Veyran side of the chamber moved forward. It stopped at the table. The empty cup opposite it remained untouched. Aboard the Wayfarer, Leo Chen saw the movement first. "Captain." Marlowe turned toward the station feed. One chair had moved. Nothing else changed. The gesture was almost painfully small. Yet Dr. Okafor pressed one hand against her mouth. "They answered," she said. Marcus Vale smiled. "Told you the tea would work. It has not worked yet." The chair moved. "That is practically a treaty." Captain Marlowe opened the direct channel. "First Arbiter Sareth, we acknowledge your representative." Sareth examined the empty chair. "You consider a chair to be a representative?" "At the moment, yes." "Is this normal human diplomacy?" "No," Marlowe said. "But neither is this normal Veyran diplomacy." Sareth accepted the point. For the next 6 hours, both crews remained behind the boundary. No ship moved closer. No biological organism entered the station. Instead, Unit 7 became the intermediary between two civilizations. The drone transmitted visual data from the station. The Veyrans remotely controlled the chair. The humans controlled the kettle. Dr. Okafor provided cultural explanations. Iris described the origins of sacred distance. Captain Marlowe spoke about human exploration traditions, including the ancient custom of offering food or drink to guests before serious discussion. Sareth asked why humans continued the practice in environments where food could carry toxins, pathogens, allergens, or incompatible biochemistry. Marlowe answered that trust often required giving another person the ability to refuse. Sareth found the idea difficult. Veyran trust was built by removing risk. Human trust seemed to be built by acknowledging risk and proceeding carefully anyway. Marcus Vale guided Unit 7 through a complete chemical analysis of the tea. The drone separated every compound, mapped potential interactions with Veyran biology, and transmitted the results. The beverage was not compatible. One component would interfere with Veyran neural signaling. Vale seemed disappointed. "All right," he said. "Nobody drinks the tea." Corin, who had remained on the command deck despite his objections, studied the analysis. "You brought a gift that could poison us. We brought a gift you were free to examine. That distinction does not comfort me." "It should," Vale replied. "Poison usually comes without a full ingredient list." Dr. Okafor gave him a warning look. Sareth ignored the exchange. "Can the beverage be modified?" Vale examined the Veyran biological data. "Probably. Remove the caffeine analogs, reduce the tannins, change the acidity, replace the leaves, and technically it stops being tea." "Then why preserve the name?" "Because tea is less about the plant than the pause." Sareth turned toward the human engineer's image. "Explain that statement." Vale looked surprised by the request. He glanced at Captain Marlowe, who nodded. "On human ships," he began, "maintenance crews work long shifts. Things break at inconvenient times. People get tired. Someone makes tea. Not because tea repairs the system, but because it creates 5 minutes where everyone stops panicking and starts thinking. That is inefficient, extremely. Then why does it work? Because most disasters are made worse by frightened people moving too quickly." Sareth looked toward the empty chair again. Sacred distance had been created for the same reason. It forced civilizations to stop. It created time to think. Perhaps humans and Veyrans were not divided by their goals, only by the distance at which they preferred to pause. 20 hours after Unit 7 repaired the station, a second failure occurred. This one was not minor. The coolant system had stabilized, but the original overheating had damaged a power junction hidden beneath the station's central deck. The junction ruptured without warning. Emergency indicators flashed red. The diplomatic chamber went dark. Unit 7's telemetry vanished. Aboard the Covenant of Silence, alarms spread across the command deck. "Receiving Station 12 has lost primary power," Iris reported. "Backup systems are not responding. Sareth rose. Status of the human device? Unknown. Structural integrity? Stable, but internal atmosphere is heating rapidly. The power junction feeds the environmental isolation grid. Corin moved toward the tactical display. If the isolation grid fails, the station's internal chambers may vent contaminated material. There are no biological materials aboard, Iris said. The human tray contains plant matter. Sealed plant matter. Seal integrity cannot be confirmed without power. Sareth understood the danger. The tea itself was harmless to humans and potentially harmful to Vayrans. If the station vented debris toward the Covenant of Silence, the vessel's shields would stop it. But the legal consequences would be severe. The first cultural exchange between humanity and the Covenant would end with the destruction of the station. More importantly, Unit 7 remained attached to the exterior maintenance platform. First Arbiter, Corin said, authorize station sterilization. That would destroy the human machine. It is expendable. Sareth looked toward Captain Marlowe's image on the open channel. Her expression had changed. The calm remained, but beneath it was the focused intensity of command. Marcus, she said. Options. Vale worked across 3 consoles. Unit 7's independent power core should still be active. The station's communications are down, but the drone has a low-frequency maintenance transceiver. Can we reach it? Not from here. The station hull is blocking the signal. Can it repair the junction autonomously? Not without instructions. The fault is inside the station, and Unit 7 is outside. Dr. Okafor looked toward Marlowe. The transfer lock. Vale shook his head. It requires power. The Covenant can remotely open it, Sareth said. Iris turned toward him. Only if we route emergency power from the isolation grid. That would accelerate grid failure. By how much? We would have 9 minutes before containment collapses. Captain Marlowe understood the choice. Open the lock, she said. Let Unit 7 inside. Corin's voice cut through the channel. The drone is prohibited from entering station systems. Marlowe faced him. The station will be lost without it. Then the station will be lost. Unit 7 is also carrying every record of our contact since communication failure. It is a machine. It is our machine. The distinction was immediate and absolute. Vayrans built machines as instruments. They did not name maintenance units. They did not speak of them with possessive concern beyond economic value. Humans named everything. Ships, weapons, probes, storms, sometimes even rocks. Sareth had assumed it was sentimentality. Now he saw something more structured beneath it. To name a thing was to accept responsibility for it. Unit 7 had crossed the boundary because humans considered a broken station worthy of responsibility. Captain Marlowe now expected the Vayrans to accept responsibility for the drone in return. Sareth made his decision. Open the transfer lock. Corin stepped toward him. First Arbiter, that is an order. Iris routed power. On receiving Station 12, emergency lights flashed once. The external transfer lock opened. Unit 7 woke. Its maneuvering thrusters fired. The drone entered the station. The lock sealed behind it. 8 minutes remained. Vale leaned over his console, transmitting blind commands through the station's low-frequency maintenance channel. Unit 7, diagnostic mode. Follow emergency power conduits to Junction 6. Confirm. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then a weak pulse returned. Confirmed. The signal was too narrow for full telemetry. Vale could send instructions and receive basic acknowledgments, but he could not see what the drone saw. Unit 7 navigated through darkness. Its service lights illuminated the station's central chamber. The silver kettle lay on its side. Several cups had fallen from the tray. The Vayran chair remained positioned at the table. The drone passed them. It opened the floor access panel. 7 minutes remained. Unit 7 descended into the station's lower service cavity. The ruptured junction had melted across 3 power conduits. Repairing it properly would require hours. The isolation grid had less than 7 minutes. Vale studied the incomplete diagnostic pulses. We cannot rebuild the junction. Marlowe stood beside him. Can we bypass it? Not with station components. What does Unit 7 have? Vale checked the inventory list. 2 replacement regulators, conductive mesh, sealant, tool batteries, the kettle. Dr. Okafor stared at him. The kettle? Vale's hand stopped. The silver kettle was not ordinary kitchen equipment. Human exploration vessels operated across extreme environments. Every object carried aboard had to survive impact, vacuum exposure, temperature shifts, and electromagnetic interference. The kettle's outer casing was layered steel and ceramic composite. Its heating coil could handle high current. Its insulated base contained a compact thermal cutoff. Vale began entering commands. "Captain, I need authorization to sacrifice the kettle." Marlowe almost smiled. "Granted." On the Covenant of Silence, Sareth watched the countdown. 5 minutes. "What are the humans doing?" he asked. Iris listened to the fragmented signal. "Their drone is retrieving the heated liquid device." Corin looked toward her. "They are making tea during containment failure?" "I do not believe so." Unit 7 returned to the diplomatic chamber. One service arm collected the kettle. Another removed its base plate. The drone extracted the heating coil, cut away the handle, and separated the steel shell into conductive strips. It carried the pieces below deck. 4 minutes remained. Vale transmitted each instruction manually. Attach conductive mesh across the damaged primary line. Confirmed. Insulate against the secondary conduit. Confirmed. Connect the kettle coil between the emergency relay and isolation grid feed. A longer pause followed. Then Unit 7 replied. Confirmed. Vale examined the resistance estimate. Too high. Chief? Marlowe asked. The coil will melt. How long will it hold? Maybe 90 seconds. Iris reported 3 minutes until grid failure. Vale looked at the station schematics. There was another possibility. It would destroy Unit 7. He knew that before calculating the numbers. The drone's internal power core could stabilize the flow if connected directly to the improvised bypass. The core would overload, but the station's emergency batteries would have enough time to restart. Unit 7 had served aboard the Wayfarer for 12 years. It had repaired hull fractures, engine seals, sanitation systems, telescope mounts, galley doors, and one captain's office heater. It had acquired scratches from 4 planets. Its left service arm moved 6% slower than the others because Vale had refused to replace the original motor. It was not alive. He knew that. He also knew that knowing did not make the next command easier. Marlowe saw the answer in his face. Will it save the station? Yes. Will we lose Unit 7? Yes. 2 minutes remained. Marlowe spoke softly. Your call, Chief. Vale closed his eyes. He remembered programming the drone's hospitality routine after a repair shift above Proxima Haven. 8 engineers had worked for 30 hours without rest. The colony's heating network had failed during winter. Unit 7 had spent the entire operation moving tools and distributing hot drinks. Afterward, someone painted a tiny blue cup beneath its maintenance insignia. The mark was still there. Vale opened the channel. Unit 7, connect internal core to the emergency relay. Maximum discharge. Confirm. The response came immediately. Confirmed. Aboard Receiving Station 12, the drone entered the service cavity for the final time. It extended all 4 arms. 2 locked onto the damaged junction. 1 connected its power core. The last held the remains of the kettle's steel shell in place across the improvised bridge. Its core opened. Energy surged through the station. Every light activated at once. The diplomatic chamber glowed white. The translation processors restarted. The environmental isolation grid returned to full strength. Across both ships, alarms ceased. Receiving Station 12 stabilized. Unit 7 did not move. Its service lights faded. Its 4 arms remained locked around the repair. The small blue cup painted beneath its insignia disappeared into darkness. Marcus Vale stared at the final telemetry line. Core offline. Marlowe placed one hand on his shoulder. No one spoke. On the Covenant of Silence, Sareth watched the human bridge through the direct channel. The humans had saved a Veyron station. They had sacrificed their own machine. They had used the gift they carried as a replacement power conduit. The kettle was gone. The tea remained. Sareth felt an emotion his species rarely permitted during official duty. Shame. Not because the Veyrons had followed protocol. because the humans had repeatedly acted while the Vayrans debated whether action was allowed. Sareth turned toward Iris. "Prepare my transfer vessel." Corin stared at him. "For what purpose?" "I am going to receiving station 12. The command deck became silent. Iris's 4 eyes widened. "Biological entry remains prohibited." "Yes." The assembly authorized only stage 9. "Then summon the assembly." Corin moved in front of the dais. "You cannot cross the boundary." Sareth met his gaze. "A human machine crossed it to repair our station. It entered a failing containment chamber. It destroyed itself, preserving our systems. I will not answer that act with an empty chair. Sacred distance forbids approach. Sacred distance was written to preserve life. And yours?" Sareth's membranes opened. "My life is not more sacred than the principle it serves." The Covenant Assembly reconvened. This time the debate lasted 11 minutes. Sareth did not argue that the station was safe. He did not claim that humanity had been fully screened. He did not promise that the T was harmless. He simply transmitted Unit 7's final telemetry. He showed the assembly the drone's service history. He showed them the repaired regulator. He showed them the improvised power bridge made from a human kettle. He showed them the empty human command station where Marcus Vale sat in silence. Then Sareth asked one question. "What does distance protect when it prevents us from answering courage?" The vote passed. 64 to 56. For the first time since the Covenant's founding, a Veyran representative received permission to approach an unclassified species before the completion of the first contact protocol. Sareth entered the transfer vessel alone. No guards accompanied him. No weapons were carried. The small craft left the Covenant of Silence and crossed the quarantine boundary. On the Wayfarer, Captain Marlowe watched it approach receiving Station 12. Dr. Okafor stood beside her. "Are we sending someone?" "Not yet." "Then he will be alone." "No," Marlowe said. "He will have a host." The Veyran transfer vessel docked. Sareth waited while the station scanned his biology and adjusted the internal atmosphere. The door opened. He stepped inside. Receiving Station 12 bore the scars of its failure. Ceiling panels hung open. Emergency lights remained active. The central table was marked where the kettle had fallen. 11 chairs remained in their original positions. 1 Veyran chair waited at the table. Across from it stood Unit 7. The drone had been recovered from the service cavity by station mechanisms. Its power core was dead. Its shell was blackened. One arm had fused against its body. The humans had transmitted instructions to place it upright. The silver tray remained on the table. 11 sealed cups surrounded the container of tea leaves. The 12th cup had been placed before Sareth's chair. Beside it lay the printed card. Maintenance assistance provided without entry by human personnel. Tea is optional. Conversation is welcome whenever you are ready. Sareth stood in silence. Then Captain Marlowe's image appeared on the station projector. First Arbiter. "Captain, you crossed the boundary. So did you. We sent a maintenance drone." Sareth looked at Unit 7. "You sent more than that." Marcus Vale appeared beside Marlowe. His eyes moved immediately to the damaged drone. "Can it be repaired?" Sareth asked. Vale shook his head. "Not the way it was. I am sorry." Vale gave a small nod. "Thank you." Sareth looked at the sealed cup. "The substance remains incompatible with Veyran biology." "It does." "Then I cannot drink it." "No one is asking you to." Sareth sat in the chair. He placed both hands around the sealed cup. Even through the container, the remaining warmth reached his palms. The sensation was unfamiliar. Veyrans did not hold objects for comfort, yet the warmth slowed his breathing membranes. He understood what Vale had meant. The tea did not solve the problem. It created a pause. Sareth looked toward the projector. "I am ready for conversation." Captain Marlowe smiled. "So are we." The official first contact protocol between humanity and the Veyran Covenant lasted another 9 months. Biological screening was completed. Language models were refined. Technical records were exchanged. Historians argued over every clause. Weapons examiner Corin continued to object to accelerated contact, though even he eventually acknowledged that humanity had displayed no hostile intent. The tea was never consumed. It remained sealed on receiving Station 12 throughout the negotiations. Unit 7 remained beside the table. At Marcus Vale's request, the Vayrans did not restore the drone's exterior. They preserved every burn and fracture exactly as they were. The improvised power bridge remained part of the station's emergency system. Vayran engineers offered to replace it with a proper junction. The Covenant Assembly refused. The remains of the kettle had become evidence. Not evidence of human technological superiority. The Vayrans possessed machines far more advanced than Unit 7. It was evidence of something their protocol had never learned to measure. Intent revealed through inconvenience. Courage expressed without audience. Compassion offered before permission. 1 year after first contact, the Vayran Covenant rewrote sacred distance. The old opening stated that approach was desire, and distance was truth. The new doctrine added a second line. Distance reveals danger. Approach reveals character. The 72-stage protocol remained. Quarantine boundaries still existed. Biological screening continued. But a new provision was added to every first contact station. It became known as the human exception. When immediate aid could prevent loss of life or preserve essential systems, assistance could be accepted before full contact authorization, provided the assisting party surrendered control of the aid and demanded nothing in return. Some Vayrans opposed the provision. Others considered it the most important reform in 3,000 years. Human engineers gave it a simpler name. They called it the T-Clause. Receiving Station 12 became the first joint diplomatic academy operated by both species. Every Vayran arbiter trained there. Every human first contact officer visited at least once. The station's central chamber remained unchanged. 12 chairs surrounded the table. A scorched maintenance drone stood beside them. In front of it rested a silver tray containing 11 sealed cups, one empty space where the kettle had once stood, and a card printed in 600 languages. Over the next 2 centuries, representatives from 47 civilizations sat in those chairs. Some were predators, some were pacifists. Some communicated through scent, light, vibration, or shared memory. Many found the human tradition of tea confusing. All learned the story of Unit 7. They learned that humanity's first representative to the Vayran Covenant had not been an admiral, an ambassador, or a warship. It had been a maintenance drone. It had crossed a forbidden boundary because something was broken. It had carried tools because humans believed broken things should be repaired. It had carried tea because humans believed strangers might one day become guests. And when the station began to fail, it had given everything it possessed to keep the lights on until someone was brave enough to enter. The Vayrans had spent 3,000 years teaching the galaxy that survival required distance. Humanity did not prove them wrong. Humanity proved that survival was only the beginning. Beyond the boundary waited risk. Beyond the boundary waited uncertainty. Beyond the boundary sometimes waited a chair, an empty cup, and a stranger keeping something warm for the moment fear finally ended.